I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Monday and welcome back to Norse Studies. Today we reach the end of the book Germanic Heathenry, A Practical Guide by James Coulter. Chapter 15 is titled Outlines for Holy Celebrations. Now the author spends an entire page informing the reader that his way of doing ritual is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then the rest of the chapter is a very procedural how to, perform a land blessing, a Astara, Walpurgis Nacht, summer solstice, loaf mass, winter nights, and Yule. The rituals absolutely require a group, and I would suggest rehearsals if you were going to go about it that way. And a solo practitioner would have to do a considerable amount of adaptation. But if you have a group forming and you just want to do a ritual without having to come up with one from scratch, I can see how that reference would be useful. The rest of the book is divided into a glossary and pronunciation guide, then an appendix enumerating the abodes of the gods, another appendix about the Germanic names for days of the week, a third appendix for examining Germanic name elements, and a fourth appendix that has a rendition of the Havmal, and then a bibliography followed by a list of dictionaries the author recommends, and lastly, contact information to a now defunct website and a P.O. box based in New Jersey. New Jersey kind of says it all, doesn't it? Now, seeing as how the website is gone, even typing its address into a search engine just gives you an error page. It makes me wonder if the author and his group are still together, if they're still practicing. It'd be really interesting to know the answers to those questions. And if they aren't together, my gosh, I wonder what made it all fall apart. But the glossary and the appendixes are the most useful part of the books, in my opinion. The writing is straightforward and concise. If you want to know something, you can just look it up, get the information directly without going through the song and dance of the author. It is conspicuously void of the author's commentary. And sometimes in our studies, we're not looking for someone else's opinion, are we? We want to know what's what, to get the bottom of what something is, what it means. And then as students, we examine this concrete information, and then we come away with our own impressions. We don't need someone else to tell us what our opinions ought to be. There are lessons to take away from this book. The biggest lesson of all is about communication. Yes, we can say if someone is really determined to learn something, then it doesn't matter how the information is presented. But that train of thought can become an excuse for those presenting the information not to go to the effort to do a good job. So first, writing style. The book was abysmal, and clearly the work of someone who was trying too hard to come across as intellectual and establish himself as an authority. He ought to have kept a few of the golden rules in mind. First, don't write an essay when only a paragraph is required, and don't write a paragraph when a sentence will do. 2, never use a long word when a short one will do. The purpose of language is to communicate, not show off your vocabulary. 3, use long words when they flow naturally and don't draw attention to themselves. If it comes across as self-conscious or if you're attempting to impress, it will fall flat and it just exposes the writer's insecurities. 4, don't use foreign words when an appropriate term exists in your native tongue. Our ancestors would have referred to their spiritual beliefs, their rituals, and their manner of doing things in their own language. There's no reason why we can't do the same. It isn't holier or more magical to use foreign terms, nor does it make a practitioner better or more educated to do so. It only makes them more pompous. And 5, remember your goal. The writer who seeks to educate will present their topic differently from the writer who desires to persuade the audience of how clever they are and why we ought to take them seriously. There's a difference between informing and an exercise in vanity, in other words. I don't read Germanic heathenry and leave with an impression of Germanic pagan belief and practice, certainly not a favorable one. All I can see really is the author and how he did his beliefs and his practices no favor. The second lesson has to do with organization. Ideally, there should be a balance between the cohesive and the comprehensive, whether it's a book, an article, or a video. It works better if there's a nice logical flow that gives you enough information without it becoming overwhelming. In the book, the order of chapters and their topics isn't too bad. I didn't really have anything to complain about there. But once you're inside of a chapter, that's when it all falls apart. The author waxes ecstatic before properly defining terms or why the concept or practice matters. It's best to build an argument. Just create an outline of, 3 to 5 main points, like they taught us in school, Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, and so on. And then once you're looking at that, determine if you have it arranged in the natural progression of those points and make adjustments. Then underneath those appointments, write out 3 to 5 of the strongest supporting points. So you have Roman numeral 1, and then you have point A, point B, point C, and so on. And then underneath of those details, you have, 3 to 5 sub points that really flesh out the main idea. So, you have Roman numeral 1, then you have A, B, C, D, and then under, say, A, you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then from there, once you have that on paper and it's all clear in your mind, then writing a chapter or really anything else about that topic, it almost writes itself. You don't go off into as many tangents, nor is the writing as likely to suffer from distractions such as the author's pet peeves or their special little issues. The third lesson has to do with the heart. Did the author get to the heart of the subject? Was he able to unite the intellectual, the intuition, and the heart into a whole and successfully convey the value and meaning of the topic? Sadly, in Germanic heathenry, that benchmark was not reached. Religion and spirituality is not a mere academic exercise. While the author acknowledged that, he was not successful in demonstrating that he understood that. And perhaps he does in real life, and when he's performing ritual, but clearly this is not something he could manage in the text. I would be surprised if anyone read the book and came away feeling inspired or motivated or having a sense that they had received wisdom to help them along their journey, which is a shame. When you write a book or you do anything in media to advocate for your beliefs, it's incredibly important to be as good an ambassador for those beliefs as you are capable of being. No one is perfect, and of course, most people become more skillful as time goes along if they practice, but we've got to strive to be more effective. And I'm actually reminded of an old story. It was back in my Jehovah's Witness days. My family and I and our great uncle Lloyd, we were out in the door-to-door ministry, and we were going up this country driveway. I mean, it was a solid half-mile long. I mean, it really was. But alongside the driveway was the shabbiest, the most thrown together piecemeal fence line that you ever saw in your life. Now, Uncle Lloyd was always a talker, and he was in the middle of some story, but he stopped mid-sentence, looked in horror, pointed at the fence line, and declared it to be a bunch of foolishness. The posts were strangely close together. I mean, it was weird, and the length of the connecting boards was quite short. Uncle Lloyd theorized that someone had just pulled up old basement steps and then repurposed the wood for the fence. Just tack, 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 tack. He was absolutely beside himself, and he despaired that never had a man worked so hard and gotten nothing out of it. I feel exactly that way about this book. The author clearly worked extremely hard, and there's no doubt of that, and he's obviously an avid student. But what was the result? It was disjointed, patched together text with a hefty overlay of linguistic snobbery that's more likely to drive someone away from the faith rather than towards it. I do not and I cannot recommend this book. But it is a cautionary tale about how pagans choose to present themselves, their beliefs, and practices in the public eye. So that's that. And from here on out, we are moving on to bigger and better things. Now, to finish up this month in this series, next week, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've adjusted my daily practices as I've done more studies and gotten a little bit more into the Norse way of doing things. And then the week after that, we're going to have a 6-month checkup. How is this journey going? Where am I feeling with it? What direction do I see things? Are things coming together, pulling apart? What's the general effect? Because I find that when people document some of their spiritual journeys, they don't necessarily have these check-in benchmark points, rather. So I thought maybe that would be useful to anyone else who's going through a similar process. So lots more to come. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this. I appreciate that this was a rough book to get through. Definitely not something that was particularly enjoyable for anyone. But if you turned in for the comedy because you enjoyed watching me throw a fit, I appreciate you. Thank you very much indeed. For now, leave your own comments, thoughts, impressions in the comment section below, or come pay me and the rest of the group visit on Gilded. Our server is called Blackbird's Brew, and there's a link to join us in the description box. But that'll do it for now. I'll see you next time. Bye.